subsequently joined, what was then not a very common word called startup. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And, so joined the possibly the only startup in India at that point of time, which was SlideShare, which coincidentally also turned out to be a very big success story in that time. Made a very successful, very prominent acquisition to LinkedIn in 2012, 2013 the time. And then subsequently, with all this, with all that journey, with all that knowledge, with all that exposure, really, the only logical and appropriate thing to do after that was to start my own venture, which I did in
Wow.
2013.
So, guys, welcome to Passion Project, where we speak to founders, influencers, creators, and visionaries about how they're following their dreams. On today's episode, we have Gaurav Gupta, the founder of Squareboat, where they build highly scalable and beautiful web and app projects. Gaurav has been leading the team at Squareboat for the last 7 years, and his clients include Paisabazaar, Jubilant, Jamboree, and Office, to name a few. He's also worked in multiple roles at top leading tech companies such as SlideShare, which then was acquired by LinkedIn, as well as Nokri. So, Gaurav, thank you so much for
Thank you.
joining our podcast today, and we're super excited to speak to you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Awesome. So, Gaurav, the first thing I want to jump into, right, is tell us a little bit about your background, how your journey led from working as an engineer to becoming a founder yourself, and just give us like a timeline of that history um, and how we got to today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the seeds were sown very early on in my life. I think that's one thing that I was, that I've been especially that's especially what has differentiated, my journey all throughout. So I'm a 1984 born, not a very old guy, but and back in those days there was no computer, no mobile, no internet, no
Right.
Wi-Fi, nothing of that. But I was actually very fortunate to get my hands on a computer very early on in my life. So I was like 8 years old when actually I got my first computer. And this is like the early 90s, 1991, 1992. And
Mm-hmm.
again, computers were like damn expensive, but I was just fortunate enough to get hands on one. So immediately, my love for programming started showing. So I started coding very simple, obviously very simple programs, basics, logo, C++, those kind of things at a very early age. And I was absolutely convinced that this is what I want to do in my life. This is what I love to do. So that exposure towards technology, and that love for programming basically started at a very early stage in my life. And that really, I think, was the first step towards the whole journey that I took subsequently. So after that, I mean, I'll keep it quick, because I'm sure there are other questions which will detail it out as well. But subsequently, went into computer science, took it full time engineering, subsequently joined what was then not a very common word called startup. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so joined the possibly the only startup in India at that point of time, which was SlideShare, which coincidentally also turned out to be a very big success story in that time. Made a very successful, very prominent acquisition to LinkedIn in 2012, 2013 the time. And then subsequently, with all this, with all that journey, with all that knowledge, with all that exposure, really, the only logical and appropriate thing to do after that was to start my own venture, which I did in
Wow.
2013. Yes.
So, just listening to your voice, it sounds like those memories and those days of working in SlideShare, and then, that whole process of the acquisition was something of an eye opener and something that you still easily relive to this day.
Oh, definitely, definitely. So I think what happens is that I think that your first job is always special, no matter
Nice.
what you do, where you are. I think your first job is always special, and that is exactly the same kind of emotions that I have for my first employer as well. So I applied to SlideShare when it
Hmm.
was not even launched. Actually, I applied for an internship in
Wow.
2006, which I got the offer letter from the founders, but I could not join because of some other college constraints.
Okay.
So basically what I did was, then when I graduated in 2007, I said that, hey guys, I got the internship offer, but I'm still interested. So can
Hmm.
you want to consider me again? And they said, Gaurav, yeah, let's come over. So so I started my journey. They had just the product had just got their first public beta out. They had that
Wow.
big mention on TechCrunch, and that really got the ball rolling. So yeah, the early days, it was just, just think about it, it was like just one room and five people, and that's it. So that was the
And
team. Yeah,
and you were one of those five
I
people
was
who
one of those
joined in.
people. Yeah, yeah,
So
so, yeah, yeah.
that's so cool. And I wanted to know, right? Like, you mentioned that this was something you saw while you were in college and you actually wanted to intern with them. So talk about that a bit. I mean, was college placement something that was big when you were, when you were graduating? And was it something that you were actively pursuing? Or was it always that, you heard about SlideShare and that was the only company you were approaching? I mean, because a lot of kids nowadays, I think, when they're graduating from engineering school or even, other vocations, they're always looking at, what are the opportunities coming to them,
Mhm.
whereas the ability to go out there and go after things that you want. So talk about that a bit, about your experience with, finding SlideShare, and how you went about like finding a job and, all of that stuff.
Yeah. So, I have nothing against bulk recruiters. I have nothing against big MNCs. Personally, I think every situation has its own pros and cons. But yes, I am a very strong believer in basically reaching out and asking for what you want. So, a lot of people just wait for their final years, and then
Mm-hmm.
expect your college to do the rest for you. Just have the companies coming and basically selecting the highest CTC offer. That's the most common norm, I believe. But the main thing is
Right.
that, instead of that, the game can be played the other way around as well, that you
Mm.
find what your priorities are as a student, and then search for companies who can align your career objectives with the kind of job that the company is offering. And that's actually a more sensible and smarter thing to do. Don't run after CTC, just run after what your long-term vision, what your long-term career goal is. That is what I highly recommend to freshers. In my case
Mm.
also, yes, I when I was into just about graduating, all the typical bulk recruiters came to our college as well, but and I was very clear that I just wanted to keep that as a backup option for myself, so that
Mm-hmm.
when I go back home to Delhi after studying my completing my graduation, I mean, I should not be criticized for not having a job. So,
Right.
so at least from that point of view, that particular job was just a backup plan, but I was actually very clear on kind of creating my own success path. Now, the interesting bit actually happened when I interviewed at SlideShare. So,
Mm.
just like every college fourth year guy, I was also, kind of filled with this self belief that I really know programming, I really know how to make stuff. I was like, I'm really good at it and so on.
Sure.
But, the moment I entered that office and, and I interacted with two, three engineers there, I knew that, I am at practically zero level. That's
Wow.
reality, that the reality actually just
Mm-hmm.
sunk in that day, and I still remember that day quite vividly. So that is when I realized, if there is a company that I need to join, this is it, because really this is the kind of team, this is the kind of culture that I want to be a part of, and that is really how I took that decision, apart more than anything else.
That's so cool. And I want to talk about those early days at SlideShare. So I think this is something that is so important, right? For kids coming out of college or even entering their first job, you are set in this environment where you are either one of the smartest people or the smartest person. But once
Mhm.
you enter the real world, the game changes. You met a couple of engineers and realized this is another, playing field altogether, and I need to kind
Yeah.
of step my game up. And
Yes.
just talk about your early experiences, maybe one or two instances you had which kind of set you on your path, or things that you still learn from today.
Yeah. So very interestingly, I think I quickly created that image in the company of being a very good solo contributor. So
Okay.
somebody who doesn't need day-to-day management,
Mm,
somebody who can, given a job, can just get it done.
mm,
So that is something that I was like really good at. So what happened as a result is, when the LinkedIn integration, so LinkedIn acquisition was actually, prior to the LinkedIn acquisition, there was a very long journey
yeah.
where SlideShare was just a kind of a content partner for LinkedIn. The acquisition talks happened much later, 3 years
Mm-hmm.
later, 3.5 years later.
Mm-hmm.
But there was an initial part where SlideShare was basically creating apps for the LinkedIn social platform. So
Okay.
back in, it was like, I mean, you may not even know that platform anymore because it doesn't exist anymore. But that was the early journey. So because
Right.
of that self-starter, individual contributor kind of a image that I had created in the company, my managers basically gave me that role because it was highly decoupled from the rest of the SlideShare main day-to-day development. And
Mm-hmm.
I was the person who could just basically take it up independently. And that is
Wow.
really, if you ask me, what really made the whole difference for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because today, now I was working on possibly the most important part of the company, which obviously we
Wow.
did not know at that point of time that it will
Mm-hmm.
turn out to be the most important part. But and also acting like a like I don't know, team lead at the very early stage. So like, I was like the center point of that particular project, basically building the whole product from end to end, and then collaborating with DevOps teams, my engineering managers here and there, everybody. So it was like a huge learning experience. I was just 6 months out of college, and now I'm given this big piece of
Wow.
integrating directly to LinkedIn. I am talking with the LinkedIn team on a day-to-day basis. I'm talking to my CTO. I'm talking to my colleagues. I'm talking to my designers. I'm talking to my developers. It was like just the most amazing experience of my life, because that actually gave me insight on how to get, not only how to do work, but how to get work done, how to engineer products from start. What is that product thinking, that's required in order to build something from end to end. These are the kind of experiences which really shaped me in the early days, and that thought process is really largely what just got carried forward after that.
So you mentioned something that was really interesting, right? You were working on something and you didn't even know whether it was the most important thing. How important is it for companies or startups to take these types of experiments while they're building their product? And do you think that that was something that allowed you to, work with your clients moving forward, is taking calculated experiments or risk, and just talk about that a bit?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Himanshu, I think, even now, I'm telling you one interesting thing, which is that
Hmm.
now when a client approaches me for a particular piece of work, I think once all the description and all the on the planning and all the, all the brainstorming is done,
Yeah.
one very typical question that I get asked is, Gaurav, what do you think about this idea?
Hmm.
It's a very typical
Hmm.
question, very, very typical
Yeah.
question. Almost everybody asks me that. And
I
my
think I asked you that as well when I approached you about what I'm working on.
yeah, and my most common answer usually is that, Himanshu or anybody else, please don't worry about what I think. You know,
Hmm.
the idea is not about what I think. I am not your consumer. I am not your target audience.
Right.
It's every experiment is an experiment unless it is proven to be a success story.
Hmm.
So just go out there. If you believe in it, I'm sure you will find more people who believe in it, and you should, go ahead and take that leap of faith.
Wow.
Nobody can tell. Nobody could say that Uber would be a success story. Nobody
Hmm.
would say that Zomato would be a success story. In fact, when Zomato came out initially, most people, including me, were very skeptic, right? कि क्या जरूरत है?
Hmm.
Why is this tool even required?
Hmm.
I mean, I can call my auto guy or my taxi guy at a phone call. I can get my pizza delivered from using a phone call. Why is this ecosystem even needed? So, in that, there is a lot of initial skepticism for practically every experiment, every idea. Just don't fall for that. Just believe in what you're doing and take it forward, and let the market decide, let the outcome decide whether it has been a success or not. Don't let one or two people bog you down or demotivate you on that.
And that's I think that's such an important point, right? Is like we are our biggest critic, but at the end of the day, only your customer or potential target audience customer should be the biggest critic, right? They
Oh,
should be the
definitely,
ones
definitely.
validating whatever you've identified.
100%, 100%.
Hmm.
That's absolutely correct, Himanshu.
So you worked at SlideShare. They got acquired. Were you there when this acquisition happened?
So I was not there when the acquisition happened. I had
Okay.
actually quit the company in 2010. The
Hmm.
acquisition happened in 2012, but I did have ESOPs, so
Okay, so you were still okay. You were covered.
so yeah, so I did have ESOPs,
Awesome.
but at the same time, so I had quit the company before the exit actually took place formally.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then this was you went to Nokri after this, and just tell us, just continue on the journey until we get to Squareboat. Like where tell us about where you went after that and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the startup, Kida, so to speak, has had begun
Hmm.
by then. So I was actually very clear that I would like to have a similar success story kind of being repeated for me. I was at least trying for that. Okay, so I actually joined a new startup called Study
Okay.
Places, which had just got acquired by Educomp, and Educomp was actually back in those
Wow.
days like a big edtech firm.
Yes.
So what happens is that my presumption there was that. They've just got acquired. Now, money should not be a problem. The business problem, the whole problem statement is very interesting,
Mm-hmm.
very curious to explore that market further. So I joined the company, but then I realized that after a year or so working with Educomp is that, a startup DNA is very different from a corporate DNA.
Okay.
Corporate DNA, acquiring a startup DNA will convert it into a corporate DNA.
Hmm.
It will not let the startup organism breathe independently, so to speak. Okay. So after a year and a half, I realized probably not the best place for me
Hmm.
to, continue with this particular job, largely because of the fact that I did not see the company going anywhere, to be honest with you. It's not like, so I mean, I'm sure they might have been successful later, but at least during the tenure, I was not very satisfied with the way the work was being done there. So I decided to leave. I decided to then join InfoEdge, which is
Wow.
Nokri. And the primary reason for joining Nokri was, I mean, I have this huge huge issue of building software for India. So I thought that amongst all the and please do keep in mind that this is 2011, where the whole job ecosystem is not as flourishing as it is today. Opportunities don't come to you that often, and whatever little opportunities you do come to you, if you don't pounce on them, it goes and it vanishes. So that is when I decided to join InfoEdge. Wanted to see how software can impact millions of lives, and that is really the only reason that I decided to join there. After joined there, worked there for about 2 years. Okay. And to be honest, it was a awesome experience at InfoEdge. I think the company is great. The people are awesome. The HR is awesome. The culture is awesome. I think it's just one of those places which I totally loved my stay at. If I had not started my company, I would have probably still been at InfoEdge. Okay. So that is how much I really liked the company. I mean, the people were amazing, so they gave me the freedom to spread my wings. They gave me this freedom to do things the way I would like, while still aligning my work very much to the financial and the business objectives of the company. So that's a very rare thing for me to have so I was leading this product called Resdex, which is actually the part where the recruiters log in and search for candidates, and it's the biggest earner in the whole InfoEdge family. The largest top line is generated by Resdex, and you will not that Resdex back in those days was managed by just 4 engineers. That's it. Now that product is probably generating 100 crores in business. I don't know what the number is, but probably somewhere in that range. Okay. And 4 engineers are managing the product. That's it. Okay.
I always find that, I mean, sorry, I was just going to say, I always find that so fascinating. Even at the time WhatsApp was acquired by India, there was a total team size of 8 people. So it really goes, gets you thinking, is that these companies with hundreds and hundreds of employees or engineers or marketers, what are they really doing? Is it just bloated? Like, what is happening here?
That is, so you brought me to a very interesting observation, Himanshu. It's a very funny story that one of my clients, once they approached me for Squareboat, they asked me that they have this big product. It's a travel product. So this guy came from a travel background, and he just exited a big travel company, and he just said that, Gaurav, I'm looking to build something of that nature, and that's exactly what we would like to build, because that's my strength. I said, fine, I'm assigning one designer, one developer, and these guys will take it forward with you. Now that guy was like shocked and surprised. He said, in the previous organization, there are at least 100 people just in the engineering team. And now you are telling me that this one developer who's just 2 years experience probably will build the whole product, and he was not ready to believe me. He was not ready to believe me that, we can actually deliver. And then, months passed, weeks passed. And then once the product was ready, then he came back to me, Gaurav, and saying, Gaurav, now I am actually wondering what in my previous company those 100 engineers are actually doing. So it was such a funny, amusing moment for me as well, that a lot of these companies, just because they've raised funds, they just keep hiring like at crazy speeds without much insight into what the organizational structure will look like. There's definitely there is a lot of redundancy in order to safeguard themselves against people leaving and so on and so forth. But definitely it's not a lean team. Definitely there's a lot of structural things which bloat up the organization, which startups cannot afford. Startups have very limited funds, limited limited rules. So even in our organization, for example, that is a challenge for us, because many companies are getting work done with us. People have very well defined rules. So we also, just like any other lean startup, don't have a lot of redundancy, which the bigger guys tend to have. And that's where we also then have to be very, very clear that every person has very clear, well defined objectives, and they are also very, very clear about it, that hey guys, that now it's your responsibility to deliver, because if you don't, there is nobody else backing you up. There's nobody else who can just replace you overnight. You are there, and you are the karta and dharta of this particular product that we are working with.
I think, there's something that you said about EduComp, and then why you chose Nokri, and, that whole transitional period is something that is so relevant. And I don't think people really give it a lot of thought. And I think Peter Thiel said something along the lines of, if you're working at a big organization and you don't see the growth, or you don't see, you see more managers than you see people working on the product, leave. And I think that was so true for you, right? You felt that there was a lot of potentially micromanagement at your previous company before you joined InfoEdge, and your ability to go to Nokri, be given the freedom and also work on stuff that was relevant, is what caused you to, go after what was fulfilling you. And talk about that a bit. I mean, how important is it to be fulfilled in the work that you're doing? Because, this trap that we get into of CTC and finding a stable job, so to speak, is probably something that is causing a lot of issues with young as well as, like, professionals throughout their career. So just talk about that a bit. How did you just make that conscious effort to do whatever you wanted to and go after what you wanted to?
Yeah. So as a businessman, I think there is one thing which I often say, but sounds like a very contradictory statement. Okay, my
Hmm.
contradictory statement is that I'd never chase money. I always
Yeah.
think about money as a byproduct. Always,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
that's been my mantra for pretty much my ever since I started working. Okay, so with this whole CTC craze, stability craze, what people lose out is fulfillment.
Yeah.
Basically, the ability to feel satisfied at the end of the day that you've done something which is in line with what you believe in.
Yeah.
So what I actually every single time I've taken a job, I have had a reason to take up that job or to leave that job, but never was that money. The money was never the reason for that. you know
Hmm.
so that is what exactly motivated me when I took up that job at Nokri. I was not working for my money. In fact, at Educomp, when I was one interesting story,
Hmm.
I mean, there was this appraisal cycle going on. Okay. And I actually got that appraisal letter from my manager. And, most people would just, not even come back to their seat and just open that letter and see what is mentioned. Uh,
Yeah.
and for some reason, I got that letter, I put it in my bag and I forgot about that letter.
Hmm.
And I actually, somebody asked me later that, hey, Gaurav, how was your increment? And I realized, hey guys, I have to actually check what my increment was. I forgot about it. Okay.
Now,
So,
why did you forget? Did you forget because you didn't care about the money, or did you forget because you weren't being fulfilled in your job, and the point was that you wanted to go after something you really wanted to? Like, why did you forget?
So money is
Maybe
never
it's a
there.
check in the way.
So
Yeah.
that's exactly the point. So money was not the reason that I was working for that job. So
Right.
basically, the reason for jobs every single time has to align my technical,
Hmm.
moral, ethical, business interests with what I'm doing at that particular organization. So when I joined SlideShare, the itch was to join a startup, see how good cultural company, culture, good engineers can make a successful product.
Yeah.
With Educomp, the objective was to repeat the story. With InfoEdge, the objective was to see how software can work at scale and
Hmm.
how my contributions can affect millions of users only for India. Never was it like, okay, my InfoEdge is giving me a 30% hike and XYZ company is giving me 40% hike. So let's go to that 40% company. So that has never been the objective. The objective has always been to find fulfillment, satisfaction at the job. And at all points of time, Himanshu, one thing that I have certainly seen is
Hmm.
that if you truly believe that money is a byproduct, then it does become a byproduct. If you're putting in the best at your work, you are always going to be rewarded, and you are going to be rewarded even more than what you think you will be. So, if I'm putting my 100% into my job, then
Hmm.
somebody somewhere is definitely noticing it. It's not that, people's contributions and people's hard work is just, going down the drain.
Yeah.
Somebody will notice that, this person, XYZ person, is putting in 110% of what is required, and hence this guy really deserves to either get that promotion or get that raise or whatever it is. But the focus, if that focus
Hmm.
changes into how can I get a better raise and how can I work according to that, then not neither will you get the raise and neither will you get the work satisfaction.
You're setting yourself up for failure at that point, basically,
Basically,
right? If you
basically, that's correct.
So, and something that you mentioned is so cool and very interesting, actually. This whole concept of delayed gratification, right? Viewing money as a byproduct simply means that you are focusing on what you have in hand, or what you are working on currently. Sorry, not what you have in hand, and that what you're working on currently is what will bring you the money. But I think a lot of people view delayed gratification as something that, oh, I have to work now and then eventually I'll get paid. But that's not true, right? You can look at money as a byproduct, even if you are in a salary job where your focus is solely on the work that's been given to you and the product or the project that you are working on.
Always. I think so. That's absolutely right. I think it's just a mindset issue as well. So
Yeah.
the generation of today, instant
Mm.
gratification is so
Yeah.
deeply imbibed into their veins that delayed gratification simply doesn't work. It's just too long a period for them to get rewarded. So
Mm.
so this whole concept of just staying focused on your work and let the money being the byproduct, that applies as much to me as a businessman, as a founder of my own organization, that as much as it used to apply for me when I was an employee at a previous organization. If
Yep.
the belief is that now if I'm running Squareboat with all honesty and I'm doing justice to my clients, I'm delivering good work to my clients, there
Mm.
will be absolutely no problems in my clients paying me on time, respecting my
Yep.
work, giving me the kind of due credit for all of that. But
Mm-hmm.
if the situation changes, that all I really want from my client, let's say, is their money, and
Yep.
don't hear anything about else, then I can be absolutely sure that after a while the money will surely vanish, and so everything else will also vanish.
Yeah.
And the same thing applies for when I was doing the job. The same mindset used to apply.
Mm.
The dynamics, the day-to-day responsibility used to change as a founder versus an employee, but at
Yep.
the same time the mindset you still used to be the same.
So let's get into it, right? We've mentioned Squareboard enough. Gaurav, tell us how you started Squareboard, where you came up with the name, and tell us about those early days of your early first few clients, how you got them, and your experience with that.
Yeah. So I think the Kira was there, like I said, so I mean, that was absolutely, I was absolutely convinced that this is the way forward for me. I think that fascination, that interest,
Hmm.
that motivation of going solo and basically creating my own path, not to be a part of this rat race of like promotions and CTCs, is something that I was like very clear about, if at
Yeah.
least directly from my childhood. Himanshu, are you
Hmm.
there? Yeah, okay. So basically, that was very clear during my childhood itself. Okay, so after about 6-7 years in the industry, seeing various kind of organizations, how they are working, and so on and so forth, I think just about found the right, so to speak, time slot for myself in my age. I was 28 years old when I decided to make this switch. And I did it with absolute conviction and a lot of planning as well. So it was not a knee-jerk reaction कि कल boss से लड़ाई होगी तो चलो आज छोड़ देते हैं. That was not the objective. Objective was that we plan for it, make a very systematic set of investments, make sure that you are financially, emotionally, mentally ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
Have no debts, no loans, no EMIs with you, and that is when you actually take the plunge. So I had bought a car, but the day before I resigned, I made sure that I fully paid my balance EMI and go into my entrepreneurship journey with zero debt.
Interesting.
So that was one of those things. So I started my journey. Initial days, I think, were the hardest. I think many
Mm.
people warned me that, guys, it will be like really difficult, and I knew that it will be really difficult, but
Mm.
it was actually more difficult than what I defined difficult as. So, so it was like just crazy difficult. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know what is the right exaggeration for it, but it was way beyond what I defined as difficult. Okay. So initially everything is a challenge, every single thing. Work,
Mm.
finding team members, finding office, finding a sweeper, finding everything is a challenge.
Yeah.
So you have to really, the whole perspective of work changes. When you're in an organization, you
Mm.
essentially enter a system and
Mm-hmm.
you are playing a small part of that system. Everything
Yep.
is sorted out for you. When you enter the office, the lights are on, the floor is clean, the boss is sitting at where he's supposed to, and you have a chair and you can just go and open your laptop and get your job done.
Yep.
Largely the work is also defined for you. You have a
Mm-hmm.
Jira board or whatever, and you have work which is already planned for you.
Yep.
As an entrepreneur, is absolutely everything is into the opposite. So there is no plan.
Mm.
There is no objective, nothing is defined, everything is open, and you have to essentially chart your own path. Okay.
Yep.
Right from finding your first employee, to your first office, to your
Mm.
first HR, to your first every single thing, you
Mm.
have to figure out what is the best way forward. And that is where challenges start, because I don't actually come from a business family. I mean, I don't have anybody in my, even in my second, third degree family network who has a established business of any kind.
Wow.
Everybody is in service. Okay. So hence I don't have anybody to go and speak and ask, hey guys, how do you find an office? What is the best strategy to find an office? I don't have anybody to talk to. So basically everything was like a discovery for me. So then I found entrepreneurs, I found people whom I could speak to, basically created this mini circle of trust in a way. Okay.
Right.
And that is what, really got the journey started. So that was the first few steps.
That's amazing. And this is so interesting, right? You didn't start just because you had no options left. You started because, one, I'm sure you saw this opportunity of customized software, and businesses, even small businesses, wanted to take part in having software for their companies. And also you had planned this, right? There was some mythology that went into you thinking about, I want to make sure that I not only have at least a runway for myself, but I don't have any other external factors. I mean, at this point, did you have any dependencies? Did you have any other responsibilities that you were looking at as well, or were you allowed to kind of just go forward and take this kind of plunge into entrepreneurship?
So I think the reason of starting early was exactly that, that you don't have any responsibilities at that point of time. You are largely just at a point where, you have been there, done that, earning reasonably good money. Money is not extravagant that it will pinch you when if it's not there. It's not too low either for you to not save anything.
Yeah.
All in your career. So that balance was definitely struck very well. Obviously, you also then realize who's really your friend and who's really your supporter when the time really comes in. Okay. So some people to me and said that, Gaurav, no way that we can support you in this, no way. And there are some people who came to and said that, Gaurav, if you need anything, just call me. Okay. And there are some people who said, Gaurav, just let me know if you need money, if you need finances, if you need support, if you need any kind of help. There were some people. So those people who were making those statements to me back in those early days, I think really showed me whom I can trust on and whom I can't. Okay. And I don't think that there was anything wrong with that. I think people generally just want surety. Okay. Taking the plunge towards entrepreneurship. Even my boss at InfoEdge was not ready to believe that I'm actually starting my business. When I quit my job, his opinion was that I'm actually changing jobs, but I'm not willing to disclose who my next employer is, and hence I'm creating the story of actually starting.
No way! He thought you were trying to put yourself in a place to negotiate or something.
Yeah. So that was the thing. But then when I actually put on LinkedIn that I'm now founder at XYZ, that is really the time when he it's actually sunk in that yes, this is something that he's now very serious about doing. Yeah.
So and in those early days, I mean, how did you get your first few clients? Did you, like you mentioned that you had a small network that you kind of trusted, and was that your lead in, or how did you get your first few clients?
Yeah. So I think one of the things was that I have been doing these small gigs, freelance gigs, and so on. I mean, actually from very long time. I think I was actually in school when I started this, and it was not big money, but at least it was good enough for me to maybe buy a fancy gadget or a mobile phone and so on.
No way.
So that way, those kind of references, those kind of introductions, that kind of circle, I was actually forming since like maybe 15 years. Okay.
Wow.
So that circle of people whom I had got introduced to alongside my job and alongside my education, these guys were now also going to take me more seriously because now I'm doing it full time, right?
Yep.
So the moment I quit, the first thing I did was that I broadcasted the fact that I've quit. Okay. I just announced it to everybody that I've quit my job, and this is what my new venture will be. I'm available for consulting. I'm available for doing technical work. So there were 2-3 things that I was planning. Squareboat, the services company, did not actually germinate on the first day. I actually had 2-3 options that I was planning. So for me, the IT services vertical was a part-time business at that point of time.
Got you. Okay.
So basically, I just broadcasted to everybody, and some people immediately pounced on the fact that hey, I know somebody who's a trusted developer who knows that who really knows how to code well, and now he's available to do it full time. people just pounced on that
Reach out.
opportunity. Hence,
Yep.
that particular initial set of clients, first 2 3 clients who can at least keep the bill, my bills cleared, and at least my internet and my electricity and my house rent cleared. At least that kind of money I was able to make.
Right.
And I was definitely not very profitable, but at least I was just able to make sure that my month on month expenses are at least balanced out.
And what a great place to start, right? Like that's really all you have to do is, as an entrepreneur, keep the lights on for as long as possible, and you never know what can happen, right? You just keep it going, keep the train moving.
Absolutely. So that's exactly the point. So when the biggest reasons that I have also seen with Squareboat, when I'm working with so many founders nowadays, I think the biggest reason why people end up, quitting their startup and going back to a job is simply because the runway ended for them. It's as simple as that. So they were burning money, they were burning capital, they were hiring people, they were finding sales strategies and so on and so forth. But the main thing, like you rightly said, is that if you're able to elongate that runway, extend that runway for as much as possible, that is really the bottom line. That is the success mantra essentially. The more you are, the longer you play the game, the better you get at it, and probably the better your chances of success do come for you.
Gaurav, I want to ask you, what do you think is the most important contributing factor to the success of a startup? Is it experience? Is it mindset? Is it just brunt force, hard work? Is it being able to identify, the people to put together? What do you think is that one biggest factor that contributes to maybe your success specifically, or stuff that you've seen working with so many different companies and stuff?
Yeah, I think there are two things that I'm personally, absolutely committed to these 2 points. One is perseverance, because it is going to be a hard journey. You really have to have that guts to go through that. Okay. And the second one is agility to move and change your plan as needed. So if you are able to balance the two, then I'm actually, I'm sure 99% people can actually sail through it. Perseverance is the harder part. Agility, I think most people already know. There's this, nice word called pivoting, which has now become very normal, and a lot of people talk about it. But that was something I actually didn't know that word when I started my company. I just pivoted, automatically. So these two things, if you have that ability to just, like go through those corners and go through that, those difficult times at a very by just sliding through the smallest of doors, and the ability to just keep pushing yourself. A lot of people tell me, and I was just in conversation with somebody like yesterday, he said that I'm giving myself 1 year to try my startup, and if it doesn't work, I will go back to my job. And I told them that, hey guys, if you have that plan B, be assured that you are going to back to that plan. So it is as simple as that. You've already created that mindset for yourself, that it is okay to fail, because I know that there is a job waiting for me. Okay. That mindset was never my case. I was absolutely clear that entrepreneurship is entrepreneurship, and there is no way on earth that I can actually go back and start looking for a job or working for a job again. No way. No. I mean, it is like it is. I mean, it is. I'll probably never do it. I'll probably never do it. And that sense of conviction, that sense of that you really need to believe in that. If you always have that setup of what if this doesn't work, then it will happen that way only.
I think what I've kind of seen talking to entrepreneurs such as yourself and business people in general is that most people, maybe younger generation, my generation, feel that it's super important to take risk. These whole Bitcoin holders or cryptocurrency holders, they're like, we have to hold for the future, and they have a massive risk appetite. But actually, most entrepreneurs are quite conservative in that sense. They are quite risk averse, right? Because the more risks you take, the higher the chance your business is probably not going to work out. So I think there's a huge difference, right, between having a strong conviction of being perseverant in what you're doing and taking on risk and unnecessary risk at that. And how do you define that? How do you kind of make sure that you are staying away from risk? And if you do take them, how do you take those type of risky moves or challenges or strategies?
Yeah. So very interesting conversation that I had with my Info Edge CEO a long time ago. I think 5-6 years ago, more than that now, actually. So I asked him the same question, that why is Nokri not taking more risks? Why are we letting LinkedIn just take over the whole ecosystem.
Hmm.
So he said one very interesting, his answer was like very memorable. His answer was that let InfoEdge, the Nokri business, be the stable business. Okay.
Yep.
And whatever risk appetite we have, we will exercise that appetite by investing into risky ventures.
Hmm.
So we will invest into Zomato because we don't know whether it's a success story or not. And this was like 10 years ago, by the way. Okay.
Yeah.
And that is, and then we will see whether it's success or not. But I will still keep the lights on, and I will not take too many experiments with my primary bread and butter, which is the Nokri.com business, which by itself is now a pretty big business. It's a listed company. Many things are going in their favor, but I would still want to play that risk card and have that high risk, high gain kind of, investment in my portfolio by playing some cards which I know I can afford to. So in the similar way, if you are starting a business, if you are starting with a very high risk, high gain attitude right from day one, then yes, you might as well have that appetite as well. You might have that appetite to fail without bankrupting yourself. If you are in it for the long term, nobody is, there's nothing wrong with taking risk averse businesses as your first or second or third step, and then probably building up some capital, building up some, authority in this particular segment, and then going for the riskier opportunities. That is also something that can be thought about.
So, and InfoEdge as a company is so strategic, right? They've made, I think their core business was so strong, which then allowed them to make investments which have probably paid off and will continue to pay off for 10, 100, 300x over what they've made. And I
Definitely.
think that and it sounds like for you that was such a pivotal moment in your journey of becoming an entrepreneur yourself, of seeing the size and scale an organization can have, and like you said, the impact that millions the impact that you can have on millions of people. So I want to know, Gaurav, like with Squareboard, what is like your 5-year timeline, or where do you see yourself in the next few years, or the future outlook for your organization?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, we actually, Himanshu, don't want to become any of the mass recruiters or any of those, big MNC companies. We have zero inclination to become that kind of a company. The
Okay.
focus of the company is to stay niche, to stay premium, and to basically service a set of entrepreneurs, founders, companies who are looking for very high quality, world class level of engineering and design aspects.
Wow.
So think about it from a more easier to understand analogy is that we don't want to be a Maruti Suzuki who's servicing the majority of the Indian car buyer segment. We want to be the BMW or the Mercedes Benz who's focused on a very premium segment. But obviously we are, whatever we are delivering to that premium segment is of value, and the customer appreciates that, and we are also happy with that kind of business. So that's the the short term, medium term strategy for sure.
And I think your client base and the types of projects you worked on kind of speak for itself. There's not much that has to be said on that part. The quality of work and the team that you have, and even the people that I've interacted with, it all seem like they are working not necessarily at an agency, but it seems like more of like a company culture that you have created, which is the biggest strong suit. And one of the last things that I'd like to know is, Gaurav, how did you make that effort to kind of continue to build this company culture? And I think especially in agencies, right? And agency owners or people working in agencies, you kind of get into this rut of working from project to project. And it kind of feels like, without any conscious effort, it sometimes become a little of a factory outfit where you're just working from project to project, or you're looking for the next client. How do you kind of make sure that you are keeping your team culture alive and, keeping that presence moving with everybody working at Squareboat?
So I think the main thing is that the decision starts at the hiring level itself.
Okay.
So we have people who are applying to us. Even till date, not that I'm proud of the fact, but even till date, I am still doing one final interview of all the people who are getting recruited in
Wow.
the company. So what I am doing, apart
Hmm.
from all the the salary bit and so on, is basically just making sure that the guy is a good cultural fit into the organization.
Hmm.
Now, a lot of people ask me what do I see in that, and how do I define cultural fit. Now the honest answer is that I don't know. It is just something which is my sixth sense, and my intuition, which tells me after interacting with a person that he will be a good fit for the organization or not. We've had several candidates who are amazing technically, but we were absolutely convinced that they will not be a good fit for the organization culture that we would like to build, and hence we did not end up recruiting them. And there are other cases also where we know that the person will be a great organizational fit culture wise. He's very passionate towards what he wants to do. He has a very good attitude towards learning and constantly growing himself. We would potentially recruit that guy even though he may not have too much knowledge, too much background on his side. Okay, so now in terms of how the culture is maintained, I think it's a very top down kind of an approach. I think what your founding team genuinely believes in, I think that seeps down into the organization, at least when we are like a small company, like 50 employees. We would have that level of control into what our team fundamentally believes in, what is the kind of processes that we fundamentally believe in, the kind of employee policies that we create in order to maintain a balance between business objectives and employee freedom, and so on and so forth. So every single thing is fine tuned towards the people being the center point. So it's a human centric company, and it's not a client centric company, let's put it this way. So the employee centric company first. So the first and foremost focus is, what can I do to make my team happy? What can I do to keep my team engaged? What can I keep my team upskilled and constantly cutting edge? What can I do to make them a better communicator, a better developer, a better designer? So basically every single thing about that person is my first priority. And the belief is that if my team is happy, they feel engaged, motivated, empowered at work, then the outcome of that work will automatically reflect in the work that they're doing with the clients, and that automatically reflect into client satisfaction and communication, and basically the outcome of the work. That is
And
the
how,
primary.
and how much of a factor is salaries or stipend and stuff like that in this whole process of making an employee feel like he's a part of a bigger team?
Yeah, so I think one thing is that, so we definitely maintain, I think, market level standards. I think that is
Right.
something that I feel that see, like the options are still quite a lot for pretty much people who are trying to get associated as their first, second, third job. There are a lot of companies which are available for them.
Sure.
So I think the only thing, the one thing that we have to differentiate upon is, how will their stay at Squareboard, their tenure at Squareboard will be very different and, very much enjoyable compared to what you would potentially get at other companies. Okay. The pay, I've seen that, if you're able to match market standards, I think we have been able to do pretty good at that. We don't have to pay exorbitantly high salaries to attract good talent, so
Yep.
like we were just doing this one discussion internally 2-3 days ago. So the premise was that what marketing does to sales is what culture does to recruitment. It acts like
Interesting.
your driver. It acts like an attraction for new recruits. They all want to work. They aspire to work. They're crazy. The people are applying. I've had interactions with some recruits who said that applied seventh time at Squareboat before I finally got my interview call. Okay.
Wow.
So that is the kind of attraction that some people really want. I mean, so we are also obviously focusing on showing our culture publicly, which we did not
Yep.
do earlier, I would say. We are keeping our social media handles very, very engaged, very, very active. We are pushing, photographs, videos, basically interesting stuff on what the company does. And that actually becomes a very good attraction. Glassdoor, all of those things, obviously we are just doing our bit. We are not asking anybody to do anything. We are just doing our bit and just hoping that, people will like it. And then, people will basically appreciate it and they tell their friends. And that is how good A players will attract other A players.
So this and like this is so interesting, right? Like I've seen your posts on LinkedIn and also your team members' posts, which is what I find super fascinating. You guys are very kind of transparent and open about talking about things that are happening within the company, things that are, going well. You share your celebration posts. But I think what the difference here is that, a lot of the times you see founders or, people in leadership positions, you can kind of see them doing it for the sake of doing it. But I
Hmm.
feel like what the difference is with you guys, you're posting it because you actually want to talk about these things. You want people to know about it. And there's the only agenda behind it is to talk about, being open and the experiences that you're having at Squareboat.
Oh, absolutely. I think so. There is nothing being done for the sake of it. It's
Yeah.
absolutely clear, So everything is being done with the very true intention of making
Mm.
that person feel special, making that occasion special, making that particular day special, making that anniversary special. So a lot of it, So with work from home, it's a very different kind of atmosphere. A lot of things are
Yes.
happening remotely, online, but we are
Mm.
still trying to do our best. I am actually constantly pushing my HR team to come up with new ideas on employee engagement and so on and so
Wow.
forth. But even with so I mean, like, let's talk about last year, for example, when the lockdown just hit all
Mm.
of us, out of nowhere. So we just gave, after a month or so, we realized that, and I could see that, people's faces are getting a little bigger. so so I could I could see that, there are things that we have to be addressed.
Yeah.
So just gave, fitness bands to everybody, little free.
Okay.
Okay.
Nice.
And we started fitness challenges on top of that. And after a 3 or 4 month period, I think the common feedback that came to me was that, Gaurav, the only thing that we was lacking, when our work from home period started, is that we were all getting a little lazy and a
Yeah.
little, and that this fitness challenge, highly incentivized by a lot of sweet rewards and so on and so forth,
Mm.
that actually gave that basically led people to be a little bit more active. People started focusing on their fitness, gymming, weightlifting, like basically things that they were otherwise simply not doing.
Yeah.
So those kind of things, they do matter. And the only reason that we do it is because we absolutely love our team. We want
Mm.
every single person to feel special because they're part of Squareboat, and whatever I can do as a, for that, I'm willing to do that.
That's amazing. Gaurav, last question I have for you is money is no object. You have 100 million, I think a billion in the bank. What idea or what venture would you take up given today's landscape?
Hmm. So, $1 billion in the bank will change my perspective for sure, and there's no doubt about it. So, then it doesn't have to be a risk-averse business. I think there's a lot of interesting things happening across the board. I think I think what the internet did
Hmm.
to businesses and companies prior to no internet era, I think
Yep.
machine learning and AI will do to fundamentally change or reinvent pretty much everything that we are doing on a day-to-day basis now.
Hmm.
So basically, when I say machine learning, it can be about interesting conversations with machines, interesting self-driverless cars, drones, basically deliveries, food deliveries. So machine learning will basically force us to reimagine every single problem statement that we are doing manually right now. So every single thing that you see, Amazon deliveries, food deliveries,
Hmm.
chatbots, everything, ultimately it's all very manual at the end of the day.
Yep.
Still writing code which says, hey, the user has asked for this, so give him this. The user has asked for that, give him that. But eventually, I think after, let's say, a decade or so, I think these things will fundamentally change. The whole paradigm will shift one more time. And I think businesses who have invested or are prepared to take that route will have a big competitive advantage. So probably that would be the area that I would venture upon. But yes, because it's a very new upcoming technology, it also requires a lot of guts and a lot of long term. It's because the gestation period is quite long. So you start
Hmm.
investing in it today, the returns will probably come 7-8 years from now. So if you have that kind of risk appetite, you have that kind of funds in your account, by all means go for it.
Amazing. Gaurav, thank you so much for joining our podcast. I think this has been a great learning experience for me, and it's definitely going to be for everybody watching.
Thank you, Himanshu. The pleasure is all mine. You've been a wonderful host as well. Thanks a lot for your time as well.
Thank you. Awesome.